Oh, I think I see him. Richard, is that you?
Yep, I'm on.
Great. Great.
I'm actually driving in the car, so I'm going to mute myself unless I have to talk.
Okay. Thank you. Katie, Melinda, ready to go?
Yes.
All right. Welcome to the March 30th, 2020 meeting of the Milton Select Board. This is a special meeting. We didn't include on the agenda a public comment, but let me ask him, is anyone who is on for public comment? Richard, if you have a chance to mute your line. Oh, great. All right. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the passing last Thursday of a gentleman who added quite a lot to Milton. Robert Lemire passed away in Florida last Thursday. He grew up in East Milton and was very active in Milton's civic life. In 1942, when he was 16, Mr. Lemire entered Harvard College, but in his last semester, he left to join the Navy and attended officers training school, and he was commissioned as an ensign at 19 and served on ships in the Pacific Theater during World War II. He received his BA, bachelor's from Harvard while still on active duty, went on to receive a law degree from Columbia, and then returned to Milton, where he had grown up in East Milton Square, and practiced law in Boston for more than 50 years. Two of his survivors, Kent and Jean Lemire, still reside in Milton. Mr. Lemire was a partner at Sullivan Worcester from 1958 and until 1991, when he was retired. He was senior counsel to the Central Artery Tunnel Project after that. That was his second career for a while. And as I mentioned, he served in government in civic life in Milton for many years. He was the town moderator from 1960 to 1982. He was president of the Milton Town Club, and he was a member of the Milton Hoosic Club. And he was also, when he was an adolescent, he was a Milton High School and Milton Academy sports reporter for the Quincy Patriot Ledger. And so Mr. Lemire certainly added a lot to Milton. We owe him a lot for what he did, and if we could just take a moment of silence in his memory. Thank you for that. We'll move on to item 2, which is the real purpose of the meeting today, and that is our COVID-19 update. And for the first update, we will go to Caroline Kinsella, our public health director. And Hillary, could you unmute Caroline's line?
Caroline. Go ahead, Caroline.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Zulis. This is Caroline Kinsella reporting on COVID-19. So as of today in Milton, we have 32 positive COVID cases, and I'm seeing more just as I'm sitting here coming on the computer. I'm going to ask the town to practice social distancing, which we've been talking about, and also to stay home and isolate from family members if you become sick, and call your primary care physician. So right now, 32 positive cases, and we had a bit of a jump over the weekend. We had 10 positive cases come in to the queue. So I do have 11 nurses that are assisting me, public, private, and retired nurses, which I'm very thankful for. And I sent out 7 packets today to those nurses, starting with the first 7, and they're helping me with quarantining individuals in the town. So they're going to be contacting people to quarantine. And that's my update.
Thank you, Caroline. Are there any questions or comments from the members?
Mr. Chair, this is Richard. Just have one question. Are we going to have Lieutenant Caputo? I thought we were going to have Lieutenant Caputo in this meeting as well tonight.
I don't think we have him. I don't think we have him, but we can try to raise him, but I don't think we have him. I apologize if we didn't follow up on that.
Okay, we can deal with that. We can come back to that later on another meeting. I just want to make sure. Caroline, through Chuck, is that they're getting all the equipment they need. And I just have one question for Caroline. Have you heard from BI Milton at all about? You heard the governor talk a lot today. You've seen a lot of communities. The mayor just did a briefing now, Mayor Walsh, about has BI Milton had any type of thought or plans as to what they are going or how they want to proceed should the hospital get to maximum capacity and they're looking for overflow capabilities? Have you had any conversation with them at all about that?
I did speak with the infection control nurse today, and that did come up. And right now they have 5 people that are on ventilators. And I asked if they had enough help, and they said yes. So right now they're not at full capacity, and I asked them what would happen if you became at full capacity. I know Kearney is open, but they haven't explored that yet, from what I understand. And the 5 people that are on ventilators, I'm not sure if all of them are COVID-19 cases, but they have 5 on ventilators right now.
Okay, because one of the unique things that we're in here now, unlike any other planning for like H1N1 or SARS, is that Quincy City Hospital was a full functional hospital serving that city, which is, you and I both know, is only an emergency room now with no inpatient capability. And I just worry about the stresses that I've talked about this in other matters, EMS matters, but you know, the stresses that just that alone can put on BI Milton. So that's good. I'm glad to know that you said that, because you do hear a lot of, the governor talked about it a lot today. You see that the county, which Quincy City owns as a Stewart facility, has been designated as a primary COVID-19 only patient hospital. But I'm just wondering what BI Milton was. I saw that they listed they have 150 employees now infected.
Who has 115 BID Milton?
100 BID, the whole system, BID system publicized today that they have 150 employees who have tested positive for the virus.
Wow.
Okay, that's all I wanted. You answered my question. That was my only concern. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
again for everything. Thanks for everything, Caroline.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
And Richard, just to follow up, Lieutenant Caputo did report on Friday that he's been in almost daily communication with the hospital. So if we have a meeting before the end of this week, we can make sure to have him in to give us a status report.
Okay, thank you.
If there's nothing else, we can let Caroline go back to work. Thank you very much, Caroline. Thank you for all your work throughout this and over the weekend and all the hours you're putting in. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. Next item is the item related to freezing expenditures, and this relates to the budget. Hillary, could you unmute Amy Dexter? And Mike Dennehy should be unmuted anyway, but Amy Dexter as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Amy, you're unmuted as well.
Hi, I'm here, thank you.
So do you want me to just give a quick little overview, Mr. Chair, for the members of the board as to what's preliminary steps have been taken?
Yes, please do.
So midweek last week, after this board had discussed it, and again, I want to thank Member Conlon for bringing it up 2 meetings ago. Obviously, it's a growing concern with business shutdown, people staying in place, if you will, and working remotely. So that a lot of the taxes that we would see coming through the door, quite honestly, we have some concern about the revenue estimates. So we started the preliminary conversation with all our department heads to sit down and take a look at what's going on in FY20 in the last quarter of the year. Some of the expenses that we may be able to save, if you will, and put towards mitigating some of the costs on the revenue side. So a very preliminary conversation with everyone. We heard back from most of the department heads. They've identified some costs for the remainder of fiscal 20 that we could take a look at, but I thought it would be a prudent discussion to go through the revenue side, what you'd be looking for as a board, and an expenditure side as well, knowing that most people call stabilization funds rainy day funds, and if it's not raining now, it's never raining. So I think everything's on the table. I did have a nice conversation with the town treasurer last week, and he put some numbers together for me with respect to bills that are due and have been sent out. We do look pretty good. A lot of people are utilizing online. Our stormwater bills, which were due on March 26th, we've collected 74% of those funds. Similarly, our excise tax, which was due shortly before that, we've also collected 74% of that. And he's confident that's where we are in most years. The trash bill, over the course of the year, we've collected over 80% of what's been asked for with respect to the trash bill. And then the real estate taxes, he's collected almost 76% of real estate to date. So the treasurer is not concerned with revenue coming in. Everything that we seem to have billed for FY20 is coming in. I think his concern would fall into FY21. We haven't spoken about that yet, but as you can understand, with so many people out of work and filing for unemployment, I'm sure it's going to trickle down to the local level. Secondarily, and I'm not sure how deep you want to go into this, but our Board of Assessors and the Chief Appraiser have talked about FY21. The FY20 number for growth is solid. They can't change that number at this point, but the FY21 number for growth, they've decided to reduce that number from $750,000 to $600,000. So they're, as you can see, they're forecasting a downturn based on what we've been in. Obviously, we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation, but I think from where I sit, we need to put everything on the table and have a larger discussion, whether it starts with the Finance Committee, School Department Subcommittee. It's been a very productive way of putting our arms around some financial problems that the town has had.
So this is Mike Zulus. Why don't we just start with FY20 and see if there's anything specific or general, for that matter, that Amy's looking at.
Yeah, so I could take a look at. So Will Adamczyk, who's the library director, and John King, who's our chief of police, sent over some preliminary numbers today. As you can imagine, with the courthouse being closed, we've got some salary and wages that are assigned to the courts system for the Milton Police Department. We've got some in-service and training that won't be taking place, and they can itemize those costs. Will identified some specific, most of the conferences that they're handling and continuing ed, some building and grounds work we're not going to probably have to take care of. And then, I mean, it goes as far down as, you know, mailing costs and programming anticipated that's going to be canceled. So each department head is quantifying that stuff for 20. I think it would be very wise to have the finance committees meet sooner rather than later to talk about the 20 stuff. Town meeting has been postponed, as we all know, till June 15th. I think that's going to give us time because there's probably going to be some warrant articles to adjust those balances to make up for some of the shortfalls. So again, we haven't gotten everything from all the department heads. Joe Prondak, who's on the call, I think it's pretty hard for them to quantify permitting at this point in time. The town accountant has frozen meals tax and put it at flat for this time. I know some of the restaurants are doing takeout, but I think conservatively, I think being flat with that number at this point in time is prudent. Amy, is there anything else that I missed that would like to add, knowing that it's these department heads are just starting to dig in and take a look at what they have left in the last quarter of the fiscal year?
Yeah, so, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Amy.
Okay, so, as Mr. Denny, he said, we have reached out to the department heads. I've had a couple conversations with some. They're really trying to dig in deep to find some stuff. The difficulty is we've only got 3 months left in the fiscal year. So a lot of things have already been expended, or we've committed to spend contractual obligations. But so we're still kind of working on that. Probably have some better numbers in a couple days. But on the revenue side, I did look through where we were year to date, total collections on the revenue compared to budget. And, you know, the biggest items of concern, like Mr. Denny, he said, are the meals tax. I'm projecting that we might fall short about 90,000 on that line. Licenses and permits, it's really hard to predict the effect on all of this on that process, but just the fact that town hall's closed and people are hopefully staying home would indicate that more than likely we'll see a reduction there. It's just very difficult to say approximately how much. So I kind of annualized it and said, now maybe we'll collect 50% of what we normally would in the last 3 months. So I'm predicting we might fall short 200,000 to 250 there. And then my biggest concern at this point is investment income. As we talked about in finance subcommittee, the Mass General laws on how to record that on the town's books is based on unrealized gains. So whatever we have the funds invested, if the market's doing well, each quarter the town treasurer would post to the town's books that unrealized gains. And with the market changes recently, that could result in us not coming close to projections. We had budgeted 160,000 in gains on that line, which, to put it in perspective, we had 400,000 actual year to date fiscal 19. So we went into this year thinking that was very conservative. Year to date, before all of this hit, we had already recorded 300,000 of unrealized gains. My concern is it could very easily in a day go the opposite way and completely wipe that out, hopefully not go negative. So that one's really hard to tell, but overall, I'm thinking that we might fall short about $500,000, all in all revenues, that mostly being in local receipts. So with that being said, on the expense side, we're trying to come up with or identify places we could save some money if we froze the expenditures. Maybe through a hiring freeze, if there's positions that are open right now, maybe we just postpone filling those to save some money on employee benefits and payroll. Or if there's any kind of discretionary spending that we could just postpone, things like, you know, grounds and building maintenance that's not critical in nature. Just purchasing, for example, supplies for the maintenance garage. I spoke to Chase today about let's not be buying for stock if we have what we need. Things like that that might ordinarily happen in the last couple months of the year. Just some things to toss out there, thoughts. I don't think capital spending will help us for 20 because most of those projects are already done or we've committed, and those aren't really operating budget items anyways. So that's kind of where we are right now with the analysis.
Thank you, Amy. Comments or questions from the members?
This is Katie. I have a question regarding FY20. Mike Dennehy mentioned that the treasurer was pretty comfortable with where some of these collections are coming in. So for people like me who don't pay bills online and mail them to the lockbox in Medford, is that lockbox still, I mean, are people staffing that still, and those payments are being processed on a timely basis, or is there any delay there?
Yeah, I can answer that. Jim is actually posing as our mailman these days as well. He runs down to East Milton Post Office every morning to collect the mail. He is seeing a consistent amount of mail coming that way. More people are dropping it into the drop box in the north entrance of Town Hall, and a significant uptick of people paying their bills online, which is good.
I think we should check on the Medford lockbox too, if we can. Like, you might not have that information right now, but just to see if there's any closure or any delays there. And what about the schools? Like, or Amy, have you been in touch with the schools in terms of FY20? I know you've been talking to them about FY21, but FY20 and any savings they can achieve in that department.
Mike, so I have had a conversation with Glenn. I actually watched the select board meeting. I don't know if that was a week or two ago, Thursday, that I was unable to attend when the budget came up. And the next day, Glenn and I spoke on the phone, and I just tried to update him because he had not watched or listened to that meeting yet. So I communicated with him what I felt the message from that meeting was, which I took it to be look at FY20 expenses, try to be conservative, try to see where there could be some savings that would be turned back to the general fund to offset a potential revenue deficit. At that time, I was just giving him a heads up. We had talked about busing. I think he still may have gotten a ruling from town about we have to pay first students the bus fees or not, but then there's still some work to be done there. So I don't believe he's met with his finance subcommittee yet, but I did give him the heads up that we needed to take a look at 20, and then we would also be having a conversation about 21 because there's concern there that we have to revisit that budget also.
And if I just might add, Member Conlon, there is a conversation going back between Town Council and Glenn Pavlicek about the buses, whether or not by law they have to be paid in this intermittence, if you will. And I believe there was an email flying around late this afternoon that they may have to be paid, even with this shutdown. But preliminary, that's all I've heard from the schools yet. I would follow up and agree with Amy. I think it's they're having a FIDCOM subcommittee meeting. I didn't see it posted earlier today, but I know it's on their things to do.
Maybe there'll be other expenses that they can save on, given that the schools are going to be shut down for quite a while longer, maybe the rest of the year. And then just snow and ice. Do we have a sense of that budget in terms of what the deficit is? Is there any more updated info on that?
So it's budgeted annually at $160,000. As of the last estimate I saw, and there's no reason for that number to go up, it was at $264,000. So about $100,000 shortfall in that account, which considering the situation is not a bad place to be in. I think the 5-year average is about $750,000 a year.
We had a good winter. That helps.
Could I just add one thing to that? I think we probably have some more invoices and bills coming in related to some of the snowfall that just happened last week. I think it wasn't really contractors plowing, but we might have had some overtime and whatnot outstanding and salting. think that was maybe a week ago.
Last Monday, yeah.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be anything significant. I did speak to Chase Berkeley today about potential savings in the DPW. The difficulty is he needs to first manage, he was already on the trend to try to identify places he could stop spending in order to cover the snow and ice. So more than likely, at this point, he's not going to have any savings to turn back. We're hoping potentially we could cover the majority of the snow and ice deficit from him holding back some expenditures, so that maybe some of the reserve fund would be available to help offset the revenue deficit. So the way I look at it is, if you have a revenue deficit, I think if you just hold back and don't spend your budget, you may need to take a vote of town meeting in certain line items to reduce the budget. But if we're just managing it department to department, because we know we're not going to have revenues, we may not have to have every single budget adjusted, if that makes sense. We could possibly manage it through year-end transfers and just not spending.
Other comments or questions from the members? So Amy, the only thing I would say is you mentioned on the expense side, the contractual obligations. I would take a hard look and engage legal counsel, town council as well, about whether we need to pay some of those contractual obligations in the short term. I mean, it may kick it over to FY21, but we should take, I think we should take a hard look at those as well on the expense side.
Okay.
There was some concern too, if I might add, Mr. Chair. So Sunrise Scavenger is continuing to pick up solid waste and recycling. And in fact, this week is a yard waste collection week. There was some concern that there may be a discontinuance in service with them. We have not heard that yet. So we're considering it status quo. And unfortunately, if you put trash bags out, you're going to have to put stickers on them. There was some concern that maybe people will kind of hold on to their trash for a while and see what happens. But we have seen consistent purchasing from some of the providers, the people that carry them in their stores. In fact, Public Works delivered another couple of sets last week to some of the vendors that sell them. So we're not trying to be punitive, but it is a pay-as-you-throw system, and those people that purchased the trash barrel did so for a reason. So we're just asking that people continue to put stickers on bags if they don't use a barrel or if there's overflow. So we do feel comfortable that we're going to meet that number that we set. We budgeted for $1 million, and we upped it to $1.2 million, I think, the last time around. So again, it's not to be punitive. It's just it's compliance in a pay-as-you-throw program.
Ms. Collins.
Mike, now you said there was some concern about discontinuance of service. Are you talking about among residents?
No, I'm sorry. I thank you for asking. I should clarify that. Whether that is an essential function, whether that was going to be part of the governor's order or advisory last week, who knows what's essential, who knows what's not. So before that came down, there was some concern that maybe it's something they do every other week, maybe it's something they do every other day. But Sunrise Scavenger has been towing the line, and we really appreciate their service day in and day out. But the concern didn't come from residents, sorry. It came from the industry wondering whether the governor was understanding that they're out socially. They're on the street every day. They're handling material that other people handle. So the concern was whether or not it was going to be considered essential by the governor.
Okay. Thank you.
The finance subcommittee is planning to meet the finance committee. Is that right?
Yeah, we had some discussion about whether we should have our own internal meeting before we meet jointly with them, and I still think we should do that if Melinda agrees. So maybe we do that this week and then try to meet with them next week.
Okay.
Mike, Denny, what do you think? You and Amy, I think we should probably get a better handle on our numbers before we explore the school and the town side together.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe a quick meeting for us, but we'd have to post it tomorrow, which would be Thursday or Friday. So whatever, I think it would be prudent to meet prior to and put together the town stuff.
I can pretty much.
Michael, this is Richard. I agree with Katie on that as well. Even though I don't sit on finance, I think having a strategy and moving it, starting small and then building big if you have to, is probably the good idea to go here.
Or we can coordinate a time whenever. I'm pretty much free every morning this week. Melinda, if you are free any of those mornings, we can try to schedule. We get it posted tomorrow.
Right, no, I think I am. I can definitely do Friday. And as long as I'm done on Thursday by 9.
Why don't we try Friday? That way it gives Mike and Amy a little more time to
Yeah.
look at everything they want to be looking at.
And then maybe you want to reach out to, just because of the posting, maybe reach out to the school committee, finance subcommittee to see if you get something, get a date for sometime next week, just to move it along. Anything further on the budget? Seeing none, thank you, Amy, on that. We will move on to the next item, which is item C under COVID-19. The construction during COVID-19, we've had issue raised, and we spoke about it briefly at our last meeting, issue raised by the building inspector. And I'm going to first go to Mr. Dennehy, and I believe Mr. Prondak's on the line, so we can have them take the issue. Mike, do you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Just a brief overview. So about 2 weeks ago,
You okay?
Mayor Walsh shut down all construction in Boston. Subsequently, last Monday, there was an order from the governor that specifically called construction essential. I believe another community followed suit with Boston. The building commissioner voiced his concern to me about some of the projects in town, and I'll let him speak to it. But we also have Town Council Kevin Freitag on the line to talk about the order and what it means specifically. I think that would be prudent if Kevin could come in and just let us know what the order means, and then hear from our building commissioner, and then let the board weigh in on their thoughts as to what should and should not be being done in Milton from a construction perspective, understanding social distancing and trying to mitigate COVID-19. So Kevin, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Dennehy, I'm here.
Kevin, could you just briefly go over the order itself and what it constitutes and what some other communities either have interpreted it as or neglected to interpret it? I don't know how to describe it best, but.
Yes, so good evening, members of the board. I guess I could start by just giving you a very brief sort of timeline here. As Mike's just said, on March 16th, the mayor of Boston announced what has been called a pause on all construction projects in the city of Boston. There were some carve-outs to that order, which were, I guess, described as being essential to the safety of the city of Boston and its residents. And I can get into that in just a second. But that's sort of where this whole thing started, was this order putting a moratorium in place on all construction in the city back on the 16th of March. On March 23rd, the governor, in his order, identified construction and construction workers as COVID-19 essential services, and specifically said that construction workers who support the construction, operation, inspection, and maintenance of construction sites and construction projects, including housing construction, are considered essential services and should continue to go to work. On March 25th, the governor's chief legal counsel, Robert Ross, wrote a letter to the municipalities saying that any pausing of construction would cause economic disruption throughout the state, and that any local moratoriums should be withdrawn. So that memo seemed to be a pretty clear call out to Boston and also Cambridge and Somerville, who had also instituted construction moratoriums at the time. on that same day, I think it was actually later in the afternoon, the mayor of the city of Boston extended the moratorium on construction in Boston indefinitely, which seemed to directly conflict with what had been the governor's intent in his order regarding essential services and the inclusion of construction workers in that order. Despite that, it was pretty clear from legal counsel to the governor's office that any local policy, regulation, or directive that provided any instruction to the that conflicted with what the governor had ordered should be withdrawn. So it basically now is at a point where the order that has been issued by the governor and the orders that have been put in place by the cities of Boston, Cambridge, and Somerville are quite directly at odds. There, at this point in time, is not, to my knowledge, any legal proceedings between the state and any of these municipalities. And I'm not even aware of any sort of on the horizon, but it certainly appears that there could be a, sort of a showdown, if you will, between the state and these municipalities on this issue. I would also like to just point out that the city, although it has put this moratorium, the city of Boston, although it has put this moratorium on construction within the city, it said that certain projects which were essential to the safety and well-being of the residents of the city of Boston would be excluded. And it included within those some things that seem pretty obvious, like emergency utility, road or building work at public health facilities, and transportation, work at transportation networks. But it also included small residential construction projects in dwellings of 3 units or less. And then it gives examples of kitchen or bathroom remodelings. So those types of construction are also, according to the city of Boston, sort of exempt from the general moratorium and to be considered essential to the safety of and well-being of the residents of the city. So that inclusion seems to be, at least on its face, sort of at odds with the rest of the moratorium, but nonetheless, it appears to be an exception. Some of the municipalities, and I'm specifically going to cite here Somerville, that have pushed back against the governor's order have said that the governor's order, which was accompanied by this letter by Robert Ross, who's chief legal counsel, which basically focused on, rather than putting a moratorium in place on construction sites, implementing a very strict set of guidelines regarding social distancing and other sort of protocol which could be put in place to protect not only the people at the construction sites, but also the people around the construction sites. In this Somerville, sort of in its defense and in sort of its in defense of its action pushing back against the city, against the governor, has said we just can't enforce these guidelines that are being put in place by the state, and it's basically something that we can't control, and therefore we feel that it's just not safe for our city to have any construction at all. On sort of the flip side, some cities, Medford included, have apparently withdrawn their moratoriums on construction that were in place up until the time of the governor's order. So sort of going the opposite direction from Somerville and Cambridge and Boston. Some municipalities, Medford included, have said, all right, we're going to follow what the governor has said here. So that's basically where things stand at the moment.
Thank you, Kevin. Why don't we do this? Why don't we hear from Joe Prondak, who's our building inspector, and then we can open it up for comments and questions from members. Joe, do you want to kind of outline
Sure.
on this? Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe Prondak, Building Commissioner, So I've been following everything Kevin said, the governor's order, and also Mayor Walsh. I think Mayor Walsh on the 25th revised his original order to say non-essential construction was still prohibited. And that's kind of my take on that. You know, the governor doesn't seem to distinguish between essential and non-essential construction when those of us in the trades know that so much of construction, and just from where I sit in the permitting that I see, so much of the construction that we deal with and regulate here in Milton is really non-essential, and I outlined that in my email of March 25th. You know, so I think, you know, the message that I get through all of this COVID-19 is that, you know, we, myself included, should be doing everything we can to help slow down this, flatten the curve, so to speak. And so I would advocate or ask that the town of Milton advocate for, you know, through the governor's office and say, hey, can you distinguish? Can we distinguish between essential and non-essential, and maybe even give some examples? You know, I also read through the guidelines for safe work environments, and you know, those guidelines are good for very, very large construction projects, but like they said in Somerville, on a regular job site, they are just impossible to achieve. Never mind, they just can't be done. So again, my just non-essential construction should be defined and should be put on hold temporarily. And whether or not that's possible, I guess I don't have that answer.
Thank you, Joe.
So that's what
Oh, sorry. All set, Joe?
Yep, all set.
Comments or questions from the members?
I have one.
All right, go ahead, Melinda, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Joe, it's Melinda. I'm just wondering if you're asking for us to consider the list you also sent, or we received a copy maybe through Mike Dennehy, of what I thought were detailed guidelines and thoughts for your department. And so are you asking for us to look at those and make a determination? I want to be clear about what we're being asked for.
So my position is that we should be asking the governor's office for a distinction between essential and non-essential construction, and then allowed to regulate non-essential construction, because this could go on for a very long time.
I want to be clear. Thank you.
Mr. Wells?
Yes, Michael. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question, I hear you on that, Joe. My question is more for Kevin Freitag, is that, would you agree with me that because by taking the more conservative approach that Cambridge, I think Cambridge may have revised theirs, but that Somerville and Boston have taken, that we may wind up in some litigation if the governor doesn't change his advisory and this gets really prolonged, because as you know, if we do this, if we take the conservative approach, we're going to be shutting down more jobs and we're putting more people out of work and potentially losing. And I think you get where I mean on this.
I think I do. And just speaking broadly, I think that any local directive, just based on what was already put forth by the governor and by his chief legal counsel, any local directive that conflicts with that order is, the governor is ordering that be withdrawn. And so if an order were in fact now put in place, I would assume that the governor's office could act to try to prevent any municipality from enforcing such an action. I also think that on the private side, that the town of Milton or any municipality that imposed any type of order that conflicted with what the state had put in place might also be subject to litigation by private construction parties. And I think that NIOP, which is a group in Massachusetts that, among other things, sort of focuses on commercial real estate development, is sort of at the forefront of trying to perhaps sort of lead a charge here on behalf of some of the private construction companies against some of these municipalities that are acting in contradiction to what had been ordered by the governor. At least they're following it. They're advocating for construction companies, and so they're trying to sort of parse this out, as well as how are these municipalities that are seeming to sort of push back or disregard the governor's order, how can they be dealt with? And I don't have obviously a crystal ball on this one, and I can't tell you when or how some of these private parties might act, but it seems like it's a possibility, certainly a possibility that a construction company that is looking at a municipal ordinance that conflicts with what's pretty clear direction from the state might say, I'm going to go to court and I'm going to bring the state's order to the court. I'm going to say, court, this municipality shouldn't be able to tell me to do something I can't, or tell me I can't do something when the state has specifically said I can. So I think those are definitely some considerations.
And I agree with you on that. And I think that, I get where Joe's at, but I think that as long as this is where it's at, that any construction company who appears before a magistrate with that argument, as long as the governor's order is in effect, as it's outlined currently, has a very strong argument. So I would agree with Joe. Maybe Michael could reach out to the governor's office and we can see where he's got to be hearing this. But on the flip side, on the Boston side, this issue that you and I just talked is going to come to a head very shortly. That I know from someone in town who came to me this week who's been shut down. So on a Boston project. So I just don't want to get us into a mess here. So my last question is to Joe Prondak. How many jobs do you think we're talking about here? Are we talking about our big jobs? Or are we just talking about some of the smaller jobs? What, in your estimation, are the non-essentials that we need to address?
So I wouldn't necessarily have numbers, but projects, for example, swimming pools, decks and porches, sunrooms, if somebody wants to put on a family room or finish their basement, things that could be easily held off for, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, that aren't crucial to their survival as a family unit or something like that. Bigger projects, especially those that are permitted, I don't think we can really go down that road now that they've already been issued.
So you're talking about future projects that have not been issued as of yet.
Yes.
Other comments or questions from members? Katie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm good. Thank you.
Katie?
This is Kate. I have a question for Joe. Joe, is there some association or group of building commissioners across the state that you could kind of bring this up with your peers and try to see if that might be the route to pursue it with the governor and the administration? Is there a channel that way? I don't know whether it's an MMA organization or some other building commissioner organization.
We do have that we do have that. The one we belong to is Southeast Mass Building Officials. I will try to reach out to some of the hierarchy of there, except that where we normally met once a month, we're not doing that anymore. So there hasn't been a lot coming out of that organization. But I could reach out to the leadership and see if they've had any feedback from the membership.
I mean, my sense of it is that Milton asking this on our own is not going to be very effective, but if a group of building commissioners across the state or across the region are all raising the same issue and the same concern, then that might carry a little bit more weight if there's there's power in numbers. Joe, you're only talking about things like swimming pools. It's not permitted, but you're not talking about Henry's or the Northland project up at Carberry. Is that correct?
No, not necessarily. I mean, some I think from my point of view, it's important to look at, for example, the governor mentioned housing, and that there's a housing shortage in the state, but a lot of what we're doing is luxury homes, and I'm not sure that that's the target of what the governor's intent was.
But a home that's already been permitted, even if it might be a luxury home or a more expensive home, you'd be looking to also stop that.
I think some of this would have to, we'd have to discuss that as it went along. But in general, clearly, I'd be looking to put a temporary hold on clearly non-essential stuff like, vinyl siding, replacement windows, insulation, solar panels. There's a whole list of things that are clear, and then maybe some things that need some further discussion.
Right, but just to be clear, you're not talking about Northland and Henry's, the large projects like that. Is that correct?
Henry's is well under construction. I hadn't considered Northland. Whether or not the select board want to consider that, I'm not sure.
I mean, to me, it just seems that those are on enclosed sites, and they're not. The Northland site is a pretty extensive site, so there's not a lot of risk to the public, I would think. And I think the governor's order requires sanitary measures and other distancing measures to be put in place. So they seem to try to address it. So if it's a large site like Henry's or Northland, Carberry, there's probably not the same concerns as a private home where someone's putting in windows and there's probably family members living in the house, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yes, primarily, but again, I think it's important to realize that, if you look at the governor's guidelines on safety, much of those guidelines are absolutely impossible to adhere to in a construction site. And whether it's open to the public or not, and I still have to, my concern is also for our employees, who I'm directing to go onto some of these sites. So I think, we do have to take a broad look at some sites.
Other comments and questions from the members?
Mike, I just have one final question, Michael. And this is to Katie's point. I've been looking, so we had that long conversation on Mayor Curtitone's group there. He's had a couple of meetings, and this subject has not come up at all, which there are a lot of topics that do get raised, but this is not one of them.
And
Melinda, go ahead.
Richard, are you? I guess I'm wondering what the point of that is.
So my point on that is, are we out here alone? Going back to where I was with Kevin before, I think that the governor's order is the law of the land right now. I hear Joe's concerns. I agree with Katie as well that I think Milton reaching out by ourselves is not going to have a lot of traction to it. And listening to our neighbors and our colleagues statewide of all the issues that are being addressed, this isn't one of them that's come up.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of, on that call, a lot of what was talked about was the difficulties with homeless population, which we actually don't have the same concerns there as some other municipalities. But following up on that, it would be interesting to know what how other building departments are dealing with this. So maybe there's a way to find out about that in order to put some mitigation in place. But I think it certainly is difficult to think about going against the governor's order, especially not knowing what we're really being asked for. And I have to agree with Katie's thought that Milton is not going to move the needle on this alone.
No, we're definitely not going. Well, it won't happen.
I think there are other communities that are raising these concerns, though, because it did come up on the call that the lieutenant governor was on a week or so ago, and there's a follow-up to that tomorrow. So, I mean, we could try to raise it through, through the MMA, but I think if Joe can raise it through his group of building inspectors, that would be helpful.
Let me make a suggestion based on all the comments. It sounds like what we want is and what Joe wants and what may very well be helpful in the context of COVID-19 is for the governor to define what would constitute a non-essential construction. So the question is, can we come up with a definition and would it be widely supported? Right. So Joe, without putting too much on you, I think you're probably the best person to do it. If you could come up with what you think is the best definition for non-essential construction projects that'll make things more safe and address the problem of COVID-19 in Milton and similar communities, and raise it with your association, then maybe we can put together an advocacy piece for the governor's office and say, look, we think in order to maintain the safety, additional safety in our community, we think you need to define non-essential construction projects as X, and we're supported by XYZ communities. First let me ask the members, is that something that if Joe embarked on that would make sense?
So,
Yes.
So Joe, if you're willing to do that, just kind of try to define and come up with your coordinate with your colleagues in the profession about what should constitute non-essential construction projects in order to enhance the safety of our community, also the safety of the workers, then we'll figure out how best to advocate.
Okay.
Hey, Kevin,
we can do that.
Kevin, are we going too far? This is to Kevin Freitag. Kevin, are we going too far if we do that, or is that? I mean, I think you're absolutely right. That, we're going to have if we shut things down in Milton, contrary to the governor's order, we're going to have private parties seeking both injunctive and potential monetary damages. And so, the better route here may be to try to get the governor to move on this. Does that make sense, Kevin, from where you sit?
I think it does.
Okay. Joe, is that okay with you from a way to move forward on this?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was asking for. I was, since I had initially got the input from Kevin Freitag, I guess I would say that I was initially asking for a temporary ban on all construction, but since I heard from Kevin Freitag a couple of weeks ago, that's not been my position that we do that. I simply think that we lobby the governor as aggressively as possible to make a distinction between essential and non-essential construction.
Okay. All right, and if you could take the laboring oar on helping to guide us on what makes sense on that score and what we can get some support for with other communities, building inspectors, then that would be helpful.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Joe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
All right, actually, not an item related to COVID-19, not specifically listed out, is something that's just come up in the last couple of days, and that is the question with the firefighters union on temperature taking. Mike Dennehy, do you want to tee this up? And I know we have Kevin Freitag on as well. And so,
Sure. Yeah. It was more Andy Waugh from town council, but Kevin always helps with everything. So last Thursday, Chief Grant approached me that the union had approached him. A lot of surrounding communities are starting to take the temperature of their first responders when they report to work. Obviously, we've heard stories in the news of either first responders or family members of first responders that have been confirmed cases of COVID-19. So in the abundance of caution, the union approached the chief. We brought it to town council. Andy Waugh has drafted a memorandum of understanding with them. Basically, it's to make sure that our first responders who may have a temperature north of 100 degrees and spend time in a firehouse with several employees in a group that they belong to, or covering someone else's shift. And in the work they do, entering homes of residents, and coming into contact with the public, that this system, and it's still being worked out between all parties. I just want to wet the board's beak on this. I know surrounding communities, Member Wells, I'm sure he's up to speed on this, but the idea is to protect not only the worker himself or herself, but some of their co-workers, and potentially the public, and just make sure that we have a first responding team that aren't carrying the symptoms of COVID-19.
Comments or questions from the members?
It's Melinda. So what would the next steps on this be?
So a draft has gone back and forth between the town and the union. Sitting down with Chief Grant and one of the union members tomorrow to go over the specifics, but in essence, all members would report to their tour of duty at one entry point at each building, and at that time their temperature would be taken. Their temperature would also be taken at the end of their shift. So again, Andy has put a draft together, which I disseminated this afternoon to everyone. It's kind of a fast-moving current, and I will qualify the fact that this was brought to the town by the union, because there's some surrounding communities that are taking these steps as well. I did have a similar conversation with Chief King last week. He has 2 unions. He wet their beak on this, but there's more to come on that. It doesn't have the traction right now that Local 1116 does.
So you'll sign this when it's in the right condition for that?
Yeah, I would want this board's approval to do that.
What I was asking.
Yeah.
An amendment to the collective bargaining agreement?
Go ahead, Katie, I'm sorry.
Would it be an amendment to the collective bargaining agreement?
Yes. Yep.
So, so are we taking like a provisional vote this evening on this, or are you waiting to come back to us at another time?
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
I was just going to say, my suggestion on that, in order to move it forward so it doesn't have to wait, would be for our board to authorize Mr. Dennehy to sign an agreement along the lines of what we've seen. There may be some changes here and there, but I think if we give him that authority, then we can move forward on that without having to wait for another meeting. That's my thought on it.
I think that makes sense.
Michael, this is Richard.
Yep.
He's the strong town administrator.
He is, Richard, but the collective bargaining has to be signed by the board, so I think delegating it is the right way to go here.
Well, I'll move that we accept, what is this called? An amendment to the collective bargaining agreement that is in substance similar to the draft of the temperature agreement with the Milton firefighters local 116. No, sorry, 1116.
And I would just add, Melinda, if friendly amendment, just to authorize the town administrator to sign on behalf of the town.
Thank you. I accept your friendly amendment.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
All in favor, roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Wells? Oh, did we lose Mr. Wells? Hillary, is Richard still on?
Mr. Chair, it appears we did lose him. I'm looking for his number to come back in.
Let me text him to see. Let me text him to get him back on. Sorry, I was said that the cleaning crew was coming in, so I was motioning them to ask how to come back later. You got to remember you're on video when you're doing this. Let's see. Where's Richard? Okay. There he is. Hold on. Okay.
He is back. Hold on one second.
Richard, Richard, are you back? There?
I'm back.
Okay.
I got cut off. I'm back.
Sorry. So the motion was made and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Did you hear the motion before we got cut off?
No, I didn't hear any of that. Just, you heard where I'm at. Look at Michael's the town administrator. Let's just move it forward. Let him do what he has to do.
All right, all those in favor? Well, we've had a roll call vote. So Mr. Wells, are you in favor?
Yes, yes.
All right, so it's unanimous.
Did you vote, Mike? I thought you
Oh,
voted.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm losing my form here. All right, so the next item, related to COVID-19, we've had an issue, I think we've had continued to come up on the parks. And I just want to ask Mr. Dennehy to kind of report on the issue and the response.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So over the weekend, actually leading up to the weekend, we were starting to get some calls to Town Hall through a variety of departments that there was some congregating going on, specifically in the parks. Basketball games were breaking out. The tennis courts and the street hockey court, tennis courts at Andrews and Kelly Field, and the street hockey court at Cunningham Hall. Those were secured a little over a week ago. This board spoke about it briefly. The following day, we closed those down because there was some congregating and lack of social distancing going on at that time. These specific complaints surrounded the basketball courts in town, Guile Road, Andrews, and this morning, the Parks Department took action and zip tied those baskets so as for people not to use them and limit interactions and congregating. Not a move that we wanted to make, but a very popular move throughout the state. I was on the mayor's call yesterday. 99% of the people on the call are facing the same situation. Received a call from Milton Academy this afternoon, looking for follow-up and a reiteration of what the town's policy is with respect to congregating. And it's an overwhelming theme throughout the state. When you have good weather like you have on Saturday, and people have been cooped up trying to observe social distancing, that they come out of their homes and human nature brings them to a basketball court or somewhere to be social. So it's a step that was taken this morning, and it's going to be until further notice. So we have, the parks are still open for passive use, exercising, walking. We don't want congregating. There was one report that the playground structure at Kelly Field, someone had taken the caution tape down and that had to be re-administered. So it's all in an abundance of caution, and we're just following orders, basically orders from our state and federal government and this board here to continue with social distancing and limiting the amount of congregating taking place in our parks and specifically on our basketball courts.
Any comments or questions from the members on that? Richard?
Yes. Oh, am I unmuted? Are you there, Michael?
Yes, Richard. Yes, we can hear you.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a stronger stance here, and we have initiated a local state of emergency. And we did that obviously for justifiable reason. Nothing in each day that's passed since we've done that has shown anything but a uphill climb, especially over the next. April is going to be a very difficult month, as we heard the governor talk about. We will have a surge. We increased by another 700 today, more deaths. I think that in this, we need to designate our town, and he doesn't know I'm going to do this, but someone has to be in charge, giving direction on a daily basis. I think we need to designate the town administrator to make whatever decisions he has to make with whatever boards, agencies, departments he's working with under town control, including the schools. Every piece of property, everything comes into play in this state of emergency. Tomorrow morning, the hospital might call and say they need the Copeland Field Center for 100 beds. It could happen. And I think we need to take a vote, authorize him to do it, report back to us or whatever he does do, but that's where we're at. One of the things, and Michael, I'm sure you heard this said yesterday, Mayor Curtatone urged this, as did Mayor Driscoll, is that if you haven't enacted a local state of emergency, do it now. And not just for the money, but for the operations of government. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but as Mayor Walsh said today, when May 4th does get here, if anyone thinks this is going to be gone or thinks life is going to go back to normal, they're crazy. So we didn't ask for this, we didn't look for this, but we're in this. And the greatest likelihood of success, if you look at historically, any major crisis anywhere, when one person's ready to make the decisions and makes them decisively each and every day, that's where your greatest likelihood of success is. And I think we need to do this. This weekend with the warm weather, we're lucky it's pouring rain today. But Michael's right. This weekend in our parks, on our bike paths, the things that Katie saw a week ago were exacerbated times 10. And we have to protect the residents of this community. We have to do that. It's not social distancing, it's physical distancing. I'm sorry if I'm up on a but that's where we're at, Mr. Chair. And I think we need to take a real strong stance, because a lot of people are trying to help us, but we have to help those and direct those who don't want to listen to us. Once we wake up one of these days and find out someone that we know or someone that is close to us, or someone from this town, because it's going to happen, has died from it, that's the reality. Well, I don't want to wait till that reality. I want to do whatever we have to do now.
So, and Richard, the comments are well taken, so certainly don't be shy about that at all.
I mean, there was a line, the Granite Ave light. I've gone out every day and watched. I'm not operational, but I watch and I'm able to raise a flag on the things I see. When there's waiting lines constantly at the crossing at Granite Avenue for that many people walking back and forth and going back and forth on that bike path, that's a problem. That's a problem.
So, and I'm glad Town Council Kevin Freitag is still on the line. What it sounds like, Richard, you're proposing is a local civil defense organization under, I believe it's Chapter 639, which we've talked about.
I think we're already. I don't think we need to know. Well, you've got enough. You've got all your entities of government. We've already taken the vote under and that authority comes under the 1950 Civil Defense Act. I'm very familiar with it. And just like in 2015, the town administrator was directing everything. Once we went into a local state of emergency, and I'm not trying to usurp, but you and I, Katie and Melinda and Tony, we can't be there every day. Michael's our point guy. We've got to let everybody know. Here's where we are. Here's who's in charge. Let him muster his forces and use all his resources and just go from there, because we shouldn't have to be asking. The track at Milton Academy was the same thing. Even though it's a private entity, it's an entity within the town being used by town people. Did anyone drive by and look at it on Saturday? I get it, cabin fever, but this is an invisible enemy. This isn't a plane flying into a tower. This is an invisible enemy that none of us can see, but it will take human life as quickly as a bullet from a gun will. So we truly, truly, truly need to, and as I say, I don't want to sound harsh, we have to take a conservative approach and an autocratic approach versus a democratic approach to truly protect the citizens of this community right now. The next 4 weeks right now here are crucial.
So to put a point on it, just before you go, Katie, can we just ask, just so we understand what we're doing, Can I ask Kevin if you're there to weigh in? As I understand it, the local state of emergency did not give us that power, and that we would need to take action under, I think it's chapter 639 of the Civil Defense Act, which I don't believe we haven't done. So Kevin, if you could just talk us through that, I think that would be helpful, and then we can have a discussion on it.
All right. Well, I believe that there is a distinction between the two, as you've just sort of outlined, Mr. Chair. I think you have already declared a state of emergency in the town of Milton. That does certain things for you regarding incurring liabilities in excess of appropriations potentially. And it also, there's a thought that it might put you in a better position regarding receiving reimbursement from the federal government for some expenditures that have been made dealing with this emergency. Some municipalities have taken a next step, and they have adopted the act that you're referring to from the acts of 1950 that does create the Civil Defense Act. That's something that we have seen a lot of communities do. Brookline, I guess familiarly, did that very recently. And if that's a step that Milton would like to take, what I would suggest is that I can prepare the written motion for the board to consider, and you could take that up as soon as possible at your next meeting, or if you feel compelled to do it more quickly than that, I would suggest you could do it more quickly than that. But I would suggest that you put something like that, which is a pretty significant decision by the town, on a posted agenda before the board took that action.
Comments or questions?
I'm fine with that.
I'm not quite sure what exactly that is going to propose to do. And what I heard Richard say, and I want to ask what Richard's really proposing here, because we've declared the state of emergency. The town administrator does have day-to-day management authority over, the departments that are under us, not under the library or the schools or the park department, but under us. So, Richard, you mentioned if the hospital needs the school field house, I think you'd still need the school committee to be involved in that, unless this 1950s law and any order under it would override that. But that's what I'm not clear on. What exactly do we propose in this 1950 law?
So am I muted or unmuted?
We can hear you, Richard.
All right, so truthfully, you and I, none of us in the sports, we having discussions about basketball courts. This is essential operational decisions. We shouldn't be having this discussion. These are things Michael's got to call, hey, whoever it is going to be again under the 1950 thing. And I refer back to Kevin. It may be prudent for us to draw it and do it so it's done in case we need it. It just like you don't always have to act on it, but we don't know where this is going to go tomorrow. We don't, but we do know that it's not going away tomorrow. So my only thought here is, you're only as good as your plan. Use every tool you have available to you now so that you have it available to you if you need to use it. I mean, what if Monday morning Milton Hospital gets such a surge over the weekend that they can't handle the influx? And this is strictly a hypothetical. I don't know, but it's a true possibility. I know that Lieutenant Caputo's aware of that. I'm sure Caroline is, and members of Chief King and Chief Grant are aware of these, Kevin Mont, that these are things that might happen in this. So that's all if there are other communities enacting the 1953 Civil Defense Law, there's a reason why that law is sat on the books all these years. And as I say, you've heard me write and say, I'm not an alarmist, but I want to make sure that our town administrator, our department heads, and our community have all the tools necessary to make whatever critical decisions they need to make on a daily basis through this crisis.
So let me just
I
follow
think
up.
that explains it.
All right, thank you, Richard. Maybe Kevin needs to respond to my question as well, because, I'm still not, you mentioned the parks, Richard, and we don't have any authority over the parks. Neither does the town administrator. That's the Board of Park Commissioners. So does enact a motion under the 1950 Act?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So that if we have an elected board that's responsible for the parks, or an elected board responsible for the school property, would that be overridden? And would that be under the town administrator? I guess that's my question, because I have not heard of that.
I believe the answer to that is yes, but Kevin, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe that I've read that law many times. That law has extreme power to it. I'm not saying this to say, I'm not looking to polish, but we need to be truly one voice. Here's what I got to do. I got to do it in 5 minutes, or I got to do it tomorrow. We need to be able to do it. And Kevin, I'll give it to you. You can answer. I'm sorry.
Well, I think what I'd like to do is just take the opportunity to prepare a memo to the select board on exactly what I think the act does that's distinct from the decision by the board to already declare a state of emergency in the town of Milton. And I can do that and sort of thoroughly address the issues that you're all raising right now.
Kevin, do you know
I'm fine
why
with that, but don't take a week.
Ms. Conlon.
Kevin, do you know why Brookline enacted that? I mean, I'm just wondering what's the benefit of it? And I know you want to do some research and write us a memo, but based on what you've heard from the communities that have done it, what is it, either what prompted it or what additional authority did it give them that a state of emergency didn't give them?
Ms. Conlon, I can't answer that specifically, but I think generally the communities that have passed it have felt that it, by creating and sort of centralizing some control, that there was some benefit to just that act. I'm not sure if it's additional authority or if it's more just centralizing the authority within a municipality. But again, I don't need much time. I could probably do it within 24 hours, get a memo turned around to you so that we could, have a more robust and specific discussion about this exactly.
And we have circulated this, I think last week. We can recirculate it, and with Kevin's background for it, off the top of my head, I don't have the statute in front of me now, but it would centralize some authority with Mike for the purposes of entering contracts, incurring liabilities, taking certain actions on behalf of the town that otherwise the board would have to vote on. And again, Kevin can give us some background, and perhaps we can set a meeting. Kevin thinks it's important to notice the meeting. I think he's right, that action. So perhaps we notice a meeting for as early as Thursday morning to consider this, or Thursday afternoon to consider this.
Let me ask you a follow-up question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's just let Melinda in, and then Katie go back to you.
Well, I think we need to do that because I've read over that again and again, and I've been reading guidance from and it's not clear to me that what we're trying to get at is in here. So I would really appreciate that clarification because there are exceptions in it.
Ms. Conlon.
I guess what I heard you saying, Mike, to delegate to the town administrator items that are within the board's jurisdiction. What I heard Richard saying was really items that are under the jurisdiction of other elected boards. And that's the clarity I'm trying to get here. It may have been circulated. I don't recall seeing it, but if someone could re-forward it, I will take a look at it. I'm just not familiar with this law at all.
Right. Well, and I can send you the things that I've pulled too, but really municipalities have some limited authorities under the Civil Defense Act, and I didn't read in that we could actually delegate other boards' responsibilities to town administrator. I read it the way that Katie was just talking about.
Well, anyway, we'll get Kevin to give us the guidance on that. Do the members want to set up a meeting on Thursday to consider this?
I'm fine with that. Mr. Zulus, can I just comment one more time? So,
please, Richard.
So, to my colleagues, and centralization is exactly what you're trying to gain, but it's centralization with legal authority. And these aren't normal times, as I said, and if there's one thing I can't emphasize to my colleagues enough, there are many things I don't know about, but there are things I have great experience and have been very involved in, and that's in critical situations. And one of the things I realize when I see on the agenda that this board, us today, are talking about something, those are small things, but these are things that shouldn't be on our radar. We should be having things reported to us, and then whatever guidance we have to give. But right now, I think that it's prudent for us to look at what Kevin provides to us and make a prudent decision to move in this direction, and I'll just leave it with that. So I'll be happy with whatever Kevin circulates us to it, but I think that we're definitely in that arena. We are walking in uncharted ground that no community in this Commonwealth or in this country has ever been in before.
Can I just say one last thing? I thought that's exactly what Mike was doing. You know, he was making these decisions, or parks, because it's under their purview, but he's in contact with them so that they have a heads up on things, and that he was just reporting that to us. He wasn't asking us for authority, right? I didn't, just making sure I understood what.
I think that's right. I think that's
Okay.
right.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't misunderstand.
No,
Thank
you're absolutely right. Certainly with the parks, Mike was just reporting what's already been done.
Yeah, I mean,
Mr. Chair, if I, sorry,
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Mike.
Katie.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, if I could just add, we got an equal amount of phone calls from DCR property, Milton Academy property, and other locations that quite honestly aren't under the jurisdiction of the town of Milton, which gets very uncomfortable because DCR is managed by the state. There's parks rangers involved, there's Mass State Police involved. It's just, I would love to help if I could, but there are some limitations. To that point, Heidi Vanderbilt Brown called today from Milton Academy looking for advice and guidance from the town, but they're going to make their own decisions. That's private property. So I don't know where my authority, I don't know how high I can go, but I know there's certain places I can't go, regardless of what authority this board gives me. And I sympathize with those people. I went down Center Street and saw all those students that can't go anywhere during spring break that saw a 70-degree Saturday afternoon and did what they did on Milton Academy property. I got all the reports about DCR up in the Blue Hills and cars parked all the way up to Unquity and probably down towards Vice Chair's house, just because it was a nice day and people were going out. But I can make recommendations and give guidance to them, but it's kind of a gray area there where.
Ms. Conlon?
You know, I just wanted to respond to Richard. I mean, I think everyone understands that this situation is changing rapidly and is quite serious and it's unprecedented. I'm really asking a question, you know, for Kevin to kind of clarify for us what exactly another vote would do. Ideally, we're going to have all the department heads and the school superintendent and others all kind of working in tandem with the town administrator. But if there's a way we can strengthen the role of the town administrator to deal with a crisis situation, I'm all for that. I'm just looking for town council to give us some guidance on what such a vote would do and would not do.
So do we want to schedule a meeting for Thursday at 5 to consider this? Does that work for the members, or another time?
5 works.
Thursday at 5? Richard, Thursday at 5?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, all right. And you know, I think it's Richard. I think it's a good point, and you know, certainly warranted after what we've seen, because unfortunately, not everyone is staying home. And what we know is that in order, you know, people want to, they don't want to get it, and they don't want to spread it, right? And they don't get it, hopefully, in all likelihood, if they stay home, and they don't spread it, in all likelihood, if they stay home. And the problem is we don't feel like we're getting enough people staying home here in Milton. So we need to see what we can do to encourage that.
Right. And Richard, it's Melinda. I appreciate your raising it and trying to help people understand how very serious this is.
I mean, one of the things that number one, as many young kids as we have, and as the parent of a teenager, I get it. I'm dealing with it every day. But I'm also the son of a parent who's in, and I'm not saying this parochially, but I think Melinda, you understand, we have a very aged population in this community as well, and we need to protect all of them, because there's one doctor, if you watched 60 Minutes last night, one of the leading ER doctors said that this is a disease where people are walking into an emergency room with minor symptoms, temperature and sniffles, and 2 hours later, they're on a ventilator in an ICU. Well, that's the scariest scenario as I've ever heard presented. As I say, it's an invisible enemy, and I don't think we can be strong enough. I mean, for the press we're on, I don't think we can say stay home loud enough. I don't think they can write it strong enough. That's the only way you're going to help, not just not get infected, but help those that are on the front line fighting this every day. I mean, I'm sure you've read some of the posts from some of our residents in town who work in these hospitals. It's an awful situation. As I say, Caroline wasn't aware that BI put out today, BI Deaconess, 150 of their employees in their system are already infected. That's high numbers.
Okay, so so Kevin will give us some background on section, I think it's 639 of the Civil Defense Act, and the appointment of a civil defense organization. I think that's what the language. And we will take that up on Thursday at 5 p.m. Anything else under COVID-19 before we move to the meeting of the Governor Stoughton Trust for the Milton Residence Fund and the Food Pantry? Melinda.
I saw that today we received an email communication from Congresswoman Ayanna Presley's office, and I don't know if people had a chance to read it, but they're wanting to know how they can disseminate information to us and what would be important to us to have. They don't know if FAQ or if there are particular things that our community needs help with. So I just wanted to put that out there if we felt that we had some specific asks, and if there was a specific way we wanted to receive the information.
So I would just do it through Mike. I would say that the contact should be Mike on that.
Right. I just wanted to put that out there in case people had things they wanted Mike to talk to them about, or perhaps he already has. He being a little closer or a lot closer to the situation, maybe he's done that already.
Okay.
I would certainly volunteer to be the point person. I have not communicated back and forth with them, but to take their emails and forward them to the board. But I would certainly be the conduit for that conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on this before we move on to the Governor Stoughton's trust fund? Hearing none, we will have another meeting on Thursday evening, and we can take up the civil defense issue and then anything else that that has or will come up between now and then on that. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn. This will be a roll call vote.
So moved.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. It's a roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus, yes. So now I will call to order a meeting of the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Fund. And the item 2 on the agenda is the Milton Residence Fund Food Pantry update. And I believe we have Noreen Dolan and I believe Jacqueline Golden on the line. Hillary, could you unmute them? I think, let me see if I have the numbers. Do you have, I think you have Ms. Dolan by name and Ms. Golden. Let me see what number she is at. Let's see. So I'm not seeing.
Ms. Dolan is unmuted. I'm also not seeing Ms. Golden.
Noreen, this is Mike Zulus. Do you know if Jacqueline Golden or anyone else is on the line?
I don't know who a Jacqueline Golden is.
Oh, okay, I have the wrong name.
Yeah, I know Renee Tabor is the president of the Milton Community Food Pantry. So she's on the line.
She's on the line, so
Um,
make sure she's unmuted.
And Pat
Patricia
Brawley.
Brawley.
Okay, and Pat Brawley as well. Okay.
Yes.
So we'll unmute the three of you, but we'll ask them, if one is talking, maybe the other two can unmute themselves if possible, because we do get some feedback. So if you're not speaking and you can do that. So that would be great. So maybe Noreen, I'll ask you to kick it off on the Milton Residence Fund.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. So just some little information. I was looking at numbers of requests that have been coming in. January, we gave 18 gifts, February 14 gifts, March 15 gifts to date. So it's still pretty much in line what we're seeing. We haven't seen, a huge jump month over month yet. But within the month of March, the 15th that we have given, 7 of the most recent gifts were for emergency food aid, supplies, some minor educational materials for kids at school. So those certainly are related to COVID-19. Let's see, I've currently relocated all kind of operations of the Milton Residence Funds to my home office. So I have full ability to print checks or to make online payments using the funds credit cards, read emails, check voicemails. So I still am fully operational. Let's see. I've been prioritizing obviously requests that would jeopardize somebody's housing stability or affordability. So if they were to lose, say, a Section 8 voucher or a Massachusetts rental voucher, and then normally, we prioritize the shut-off notices for lights and heat. Thankfully, the utility companies have issued moratoriums on shut-off notices. So people keep calling saying, I'm so afraid my utility bills are creeping up, but they don't have a shut-off notice yet. So I'm saying, I hear you, I understand your worries. Once you do get those shut-off notices, let me know. We'll take a look at that and see what we can do. But the ones that are going out are kind of the emergency food aid and supplies. Minimum standards, we're still keeping kind of the minimum standards to apply, that they do fill out an application. I can email people applications. They fill out a Word document front and back. And lately we've, obviously when I'm in the office, I get actual copies. Now people are taking photocopy, pictures on their phone of the copy of their lease, their mortgage statement, their income, or any proof of like a layoff notice and the utility bills. So I'm still kind of verifying all that to keep the normal applications. And I guess more importantly, I've been working really closely with Marty McKenna O'Keefe at the school, the family liaison. She's continues to be amazing. And we've kind of partnered, make sure each family that's really, a priority for her, a priority for me, are getting connected to the food pantry, to the wonderful breakfast and lunch program that the school is offering every Wednesday, and making sure that either she or I are making deliveries right to families that can't go for the food pickup. And then I'm kind of backing that up with, small checks or food orders. Like today we had a family who had completely run out of food, and the child has a significant medical concern, and the single mom, she was afraid to go anywhere that she'd, infect the child. And so Marty was able to make a food order online, and I was able to pay for it using the Milton Residence Fund, Governor Stoughton funds. So I feel like we are still able to connect with people and get them what they need, and we'll see kind of how things roll in. I'm hoping that the government stimulus checks will assist the renters with the ability to pay their April and May rent. So that will at least keep housing stable. But I'll, continue to connect with all families on that. We're outreaching to, everyone we can think of through the regular First Parish Church website. We're noted on the Milton Community Food Pantry site. The public schools are obviously connecting all the guidance counselors and giving my information. The Milton Neighbors Facebook page has reminded people that we're here to assist. I'm trying to think. Obviously Caroline Kinsella was posting things through the Milton Health Department. And we are wondering, I know I spoke with Melinda last week or so. We are wondering if there might be a contact at the hospitals that I could reach out to and make sure that they're aware of the Milton Residence Fund. So if anyone has that type of contact, I'd be happy to reach out to them. So I'm not sure if there's specific questions, additional information I can provide. I guess the last piece is currently left in the Governor Stoughton grant that was provided to us. We have 30,000 as of today left in that fund.
So Noreen, I'm gonna ask the members if they have any questions, but just two things quick. For the contact at the hospitals, we can get you that. And also you should probably be on Caroline's Thursday call. She has a Thursday call with stakeholders around town.
Okay.
So you should probably be on that call.
Sure.
For it. So we'll make that connection and make sure you're on that call. So
Okay. Yeah, that'd be fine.
with that, comments or questions from the members?
I have one question. I don't have to go first, though. I didn't hear if anyone else spoke.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Richard.
So this is Richard Wells. So I have two questions, one question and one statement. So just comparison-wise, where were you about this time last year, balance-wise? Do you recall?
That's a good question. I have my Excel spreadsheet in front of me. Let me see if, let's see, in March of last year, I had 1, 2, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I had 17 gifts provided last March. So we're still pretty much, dead on even with what we provided last year.
And my second point, right. Yeah, I think your April's going to be tougher than your March is this year. But my second point is, if you could ask us for a dollar amount for cushion, what would you ask us for tonight? Do you have a number in your head?
I don't. I'm just not sure because I haven't seen that surge in requests yet.
Right. What would make you feel? Let me pose it to you this way: what would make my colleagues may get aggravated with me, but what would make you feel comfortable if I said to you tonight, like, look, here's where April may be going. May's not going to be any better. What? And I know you're not going to come up with a crazy number, which is why I'm asking you the question. What could we do to kind of give to you to put away in a rainy day fund to make sure you could get through these next 2 months?
Can I make a suggestion? Noreen.
Yeah.
If you need to do a little homework on this, we could have you back on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I could go with that. I'm fine with that.
But that's just a suggestion. Melinda, go ahead.
Well, there are a couple of things. I think that we'd also maybe want to have a regular check-in. I think having Noreen attend the stakeholder meeting is probably really the right thing to do, because that can provide a check-in so that we can keep an eye on things if things start to really roll. But I guess I also have a question about, we were talking about minimum standards to make sure that aid that's given is appropriate. And I'm wondering if at some point Noreen might need like an additional person to help her if things get really, really busy. And so I was wondering about that. And also, I have a concern that, say, the camps won't open or won't be able to, and I'm wondering, I mean, as a town, we don't have the resources to deal with that or to help parents, but that it's something I just want us to be aware of, because maybe we're going to need help from the state in some way. And it wouldn't be just us, it would be lots of municipalities. So, but I'm concerned that Noreen might need some help. And she's had help in the past for other things, so.
Yes, thank you, Melinda. Yeah, I'm thinking instead of coming up with a number that could get me through, because I'm just not sure. I haven't seen, you know, I can obviously say the average monthly gifts we've given out or things like that through Governor Stone, but it just might not compare to what we see going forward. But if I do participate in ongoing consistent check-ins, I could say, you know, once we get below the 15,000 mark, we request an additional 15,000 or something like that, whatever acceptable to the members. And in terms of camp, I checked in today with Bonnie at the Parks and Rec, which you may have also, just to say, you know, I assume obviously the April 1st registration for camp is on hold. And she said, yes, you know, we're hoping summer camp will still go on, but we're going to pause the registration for 3 weeks to see, you know, if it will look any better, who knows. But I have 14 young people right now on my wait list to register for camp utilizing Governor Stoughton funds. So I think that equates to about $9,100. It's still $650 per youth for the whole summer. And there is, you know, whatever it is, 10 parents and 14 kids that are hoping for our help to get into camp if that opens. If likelihood camp doesn't open, you know, I'm not sure what the parents will do if work does resume, you know, if businesses do reopen.
Right. Well, I don't know how the other members of the board feel, but I think that it would be beneficial if we could, at least for the time being, protect that $9,100 because we're talking about something that benefits families who have a working parent who can't stay home with children, and it's really important if they can get back to work that they're able to.
Thank you. Yes.
Katie?
This is Katie. I have a suggestion and a question for Noreen, but what I was going to do is make a motion to approve a dollar amount for the Milton Residence Fund, largely because we haven't really spent an awful lot out of the Governor Stoughton Fund this year. Noreen, I think Richard is correct that you're going to have you're going to have an increased need in April than you did in March, and you're going to probably have some different needs. And I think you may be kind of considering your standards and your requirements for folks, because I think you're going to find some people, whether it's April or May or whenever, that you may have a situation where you have someone who doesn't meet your traditional standard. It's not a Section 8 housing recipient. Maybe it's somebody who owns their own home but has lost, maybe there are two incomes that have been lost in a household, and there's some dire needs on a short-term basis. We're all seeing what's happening with restaurants and with small businesses. So I think you're going to have some needs that might be it might be a different group of applicants than what you've had in the past. You might have some additional applicants who may not have met your stricter requirements in the past. So I was going to propose we transfer $25,000 to the Milton Residence Fund. Noreen can come back to us if she runs out or if there is a need, but the funds can carry over into the next fiscal year. And it at least be something rather than coming back on Thursday night, which, you know, I'm open to. If that's what everybody wants to do, take it up Thursday night, that's fine too. It just seems to me we could act on this tonight, given that we know how dire this situation is in New York and in a lot of other places. And read the predictions, Boston is heading in the direction of New York. So, you know, I think you're going to see some real increased need. And if there's a way we can meet it on a short-term basis and then take it up again. I think Mike's idea and Melinda's idea that you take part in their weekly calls is a good one. The question I had for you, Noreen, is in terms of the hospital, you know, the Governor Stoughton Fund gives the hospital a contribution for the free aid, free medical care. are you looking specifically for like a patient there who might have who they might find out has housing needs or food needs or other needs that perhaps they could put that patient in touch with you, or were you thinking about hospital care?
No, yes, that's what I was thinking about. Just somebody who might not know about the Milton Residence Fund,
Okay.
getting care at the hospital and realizing that there is a Milton Residence Fund that helps with housing or utility or, you know, small car repairs so they can keep going to medical appointments or whatever it is.
That makes sense. I just wasn't clear what you were.
Yes, yeah, no, and that's a good reminder. I'd forgotten that you assisted the hospital with the free care.
So for discussion purposes, I'll move that we transfer $25,000 from the Governor's Stoughton Fund to the Milton Residence.
I'll second that. Mr. Chair, I'll second Katie's motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Nope.
I just have one question, Noreen. The $30,000 that you have remaining, does that include the $10,000 that we allocated either last week or the week before?
You allocated $10,000 the week before to the food pantry, not to the Milton Residence Fund.
That's right. That's right.
So the $30,000 remaining includes the $9,000 kind of set aside that I wanted to use for the summer camps.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yes, okay.
Thank
So
you.
yeah,
So,
greatly appreciated the additional funds.
so Katie, was it your intention to, I mean, if we're sort of taking that $9,000 off the table, is 25 enough, or did you want to do 35?
Either one. I mean, 35. I think I thought we were going to have a list of the investment income from the fund, but if I'm not mistaken, I think Mike Dennehy mentioned it was 115,000 or so on the last call. So I mean, if we do 35, I'll take that as a friendly amendment.
What do you think, Richard?
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I think that summer camps are so far off a realistic right
Yeah.
now. Right now, it's just
I know
I really
exactly
do.
what you're saying. Yes, yes, yeah. So we would have,
And to Noreen's point, I think putting Noreen on the working group, I think it will open some doors for her to relationships that she doesn't have, and will also enlighten those partners that we have in that working group as to what Noreen does. So I think that's a win-win for everybody here.
Okay, the friendly amendment has been accepted. So the motion that's been made and seconded is now for 35,000. Any further discussion? All those in favor, your roll call vote, Ms. Collins,
yes.
Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Lewis, yes. Thank you, Noreen, for that.
Great,
Now
thank
moving
you.
on to the food pantry, Ms. Tabor and Ms. Brawley.
I think Renee's mic is still off, so if you could enable that, that would be great. This is Pat speaking, and I'm the director of the Milton Community Food Pantry. One thing that I wanted to do, after thanking you for the gift that you gave us of the $10,000, was to express to Noreen that we have people available who can do food deliveries to any family that she gets a call from. Our pantry line is operational, and we have folks that are ready to go grab a bag of groceries right off our shelf. We have pre-packed bags. So that's certainly a resource available to you, Noreen. You don't have to go shopping and delivering. That's something we can handle also. But Renee has a statement that we've worked on as a group. And so Renee, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the trustees. We really do appreciate the very generous $10,000 donation that you gave to the food pantry last week at your last meeting. And just to let you know, we are keeping the pantry open on a different schedule than we have been open. We're trying to stay open every other week, being respectful of the fact that the Parkway Methodist Church, where we're housed, has been closed for the last few weeks. They've canceled all of their services and their meetings, and all of their events, are allowing the food pantry to remain open at our discretion. We've changed the format. We are not having people come into the church, but we are trying to register them through the window and get groceries out to them into the parking lot and help them. We had a donation of carriages to help people who are walking and to help people get groceries to their cars, so that we can continue to service all of the clients that are in need of help. We've sort of opened things up to any family in town that has had a job loss or a furlough. We will not turn anyone away. And we did sort of anticipate that our budget would go up the last time we were open, but we did only have about 3 new people come in, and I expect that that will change in the next few weeks. So we are trying to prepare for that. We've also been coordinating with Katie Schmidt, who you may know. She is a former nurse in town and you know, has a background in, but I can't remember what her background is, Pat.
Public health. She's a director of the public health nursing in the city of Boston for many, many years.
Right. And so she's helped us to work on our processes to help us, you know, maintain social distancing and, you know, to really be able to follow all the guidelines that have been put in place so that we can remain open for our clients. We did see our numbers actually go down in March a little bit. We're usually open 4 weeks. We were only open 3. January and February, we serviced around 110 families each month, and we had about 90 clients in March. And again, I do anticipate that that will go up. So we're open to any questions that
We are sending out a letter to all of our registered participants, advising them that the new system is in place, because we did get a call from one of our members who was frightened to come to the pantry because of how we used to operate with the very tight quarters we have there. And so we did assure her that, you know, we were changing things, and that spurred us to send a letter out to everyone so that even the people who have not come the last couple of weeks in March will now understand that they can come safely to us as a grocery pickup location. And hopefully they will take advantage of that.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Renee. Comments or questions from the members?
It's Melinda. I'm just wondering if there's anything else that that you feel we might be able to help you with at this time.
I actually feel like we've worked very hard to put a process in place that we can adhere to for the time being. I mean, I think things are changing so rapidly that we really just don't know what to anticipate. We're going to be open on Saturday, April 4th, and I think we will reconvene after that to see how everything goes, debrief, and if we need to make changes or if we need additional resources, we will reach out to you.
Comments or questions?
I have one. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Wells.
Go ahead, Michael. I'll go after you.
So I was just going to say, so we have a meeting scheduled on the 7th. So perhaps we can include you on the agenda. We'll put a placeholder on the agenda, and you can come in and tell us how it went on Saturday and what more you might need going forward.
That would be great.
Mr. Wells.
So my question, obviously, not that we have a lot of this, but I'm not sure what your protocol is, but as far as gloves, things like that, are you okay in that arena? Are you even, as far as any type of protective gear, are you okay in that arena?
We are pretty much. I was on the conference call from the Great Boston Food Bank this afternoon, where they talked about a number of, including some of the things that we have creating 2 teams that are working separately from each other for sustainability in case someone is affected. And they did talk about masking. They said that they really did not suggest, they wanted to stay with the guideline that was established, which is the masks and protective equipment goes to the healthcare people. So we have not implemented the masks yet. It seems like their take on it was that if people are more comfortable wearing the masks, they don't make them take them off, but they're not saying that we should go out and try to take masks away from people that really need them in the healthcare system. we are using gloves. We have pre-purchased a lot of gloves, and we're making use of that. And again, we're trying to determine things like, shall we accept donations? Because at this point, donations are also items that have to be set aside for a day, 2 days. And that was another one of the directives from the Greater Boston Food Bank is if you're accepting donations, put them aside in a weigh station, and come back and deal with them 2 days later. So it's just a really crazy time for everyone.
It is. So I just wanted, my point in even asking, and you're correct, like Dr. Fauci said this in one of his briefings yesterday, if you're getting to-go food, don't even bring the container in your house, take it out and leave the container outside. So I just want to, because you're only going to be as effective for the community as you can protect your staff. And if you can protect your staff, you can continue to function. So I just wanted to make sure you're all right in that arena. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think we are right now.
Other comments or questions? All right, well, seeing none, we will put you back on the agenda for the 7th for what resources and things you need to do and how it goes on the 4th. And good luck and thank you for all you do. And
Thank you. Thanks for your support.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
and make sure that you know we're here every week and twice a week now. So we'll make sure we keep make sure you get everything you need.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So there's nothing else on the agenda. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Just one question, Mr. Chair, before you adjourn. Since we're going to meet on Thursday, is there anything that we need to add that you want to get on there now that I know that we didn't have this plan before we started tonight? Is there anything, Mr. Denny, that we want to get on the agenda for Thursday? You don't have to answer me now. I'm just
Yeah.
putting that out there. Just
Yeah. I mean,
If I might, I know the DPW recycling day is scheduled for Saturday. It's always the first Saturday of the month. There are a lot of people that rely on this, both on the town side and from a residential. They have a system in place where social distancing would work. I'm confident in DPW's ability to be able to handle the material in a non-congregational way safely. So it's something that we may want to talk about Thursday night, if you don't mind. It's scheduled for this Saturday, so.
you don't have to talk about it to me. I'm like, if they can do it safely, do it.
all right. Yeah, and I'm sure things will come up between now, you know, even now and tomorrow morning that we can include on the agenda, and obviously, you know, email anything that comes in. I think there's the House and Senate, Massachusetts House and Senate are working on this relief bill, working on it this afternoon, as I understand it, on the town meeting quorum and the town meeting remote communications. We may have some more updates on that on Thursday as well. So, but I'm sure that as you mentioned, Richard, this is fast moving. We'll have things that come up between now and then that we can discuss. All right. So the motion's been made. I believe made. It was made and made and seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Ms. Collins.
Yes.
Ms. Conlon.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
All right, thank you all. We will see you again on Thursday at 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.